and welcome to Agenda 2030. I am Toyin Nkamiang John. It's been 5 years since world leaders adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals at the United Nations General Assembly. The SDGs are a universal call to action to end poverty, safeguard the planet, and ensure all people enjoy peace and prosperity by the year 2030. And to further accelerate efforts in the attainment of the goals, the global community in January began the countdown of a decade of action for the SDGs. On today's episode, we'll be hearing from the Senior Special Assistant to the President on SDGs, Princess Adejoke Orilokwe Adefulire, and her Senior Technical Advisor, Dr. Bala Yunisa, as they give more insight into Nigeria's strategic plans in the new dispensation. To stay with us.
Agenda 2030. As a successor framework for the Millennium Development Goals, the global community rolled out a bigger, deeper, and more encompassing framework called the Sustainable Development Goals, designed to transform our world, lift the poor out of poverty, as well as ensure inclusive and healthy society. On Agenda 2030, we take you on a media trip to the global destination of the future we want. With everyone on board, we focus on the people and their struggle, the civil society and their agitations, the government and her development effort, the global development agenda, its 17 goals and 169 targets. We bring you all the deliberations, insightful conversations, and high-level partnerships on the road to global destination. Agenda 2030, showing on this channel. Agenda 2030, leaving no one behind.
We are delighted today to be joined here at UNDP by the Senior Advisor to the President on SDGs.
We're entering the decade of action on SDGs to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals in Nigeria. What are the key priorities for Nigeria as we start in this important last few years to achieve the SDGs?
In terms of key priority areas, the President of Nigeria has announced that in 10 years, 100 million people will be moved out of poverty. And the key priority area again talks about social development from goal 1 to goal 6. It's also another pronouncement by the Federal Ministry of Education that 10 million people, young people that are out of school, will be back in school. We are planning to reduce the infant and maternal deaths to the lowest minimum, if possible, to eradicate it. We are looking at us also to see that our young people, after leaving school, are equipped with the necessary skills to be able to make them employable, and so that we can create more jobs, as well as we are trying to encouraging both local and foreign investment to invest in Nigeria for prosperity for the people of Nigeria.
That is an ambitious plan. I want to assure you from the UN side, UNDP and the wider UN family, we will be with you in this last important decade in removing a lot of Nigerians out of poverty, but more importantly, ensuring that Nigeria becomes one of the African countries that achieves the goal. Because without Nigeria achieving the goal, the continent will not achieve the SDG goals. So
we want more people to know about SDGs, how they can work with the government, how they can contribute to the development of Nigeria, and how they can support the government to achieve SDGs. Your role, my role, your role, everybody's role is very important. My action, your action is very important. It is not about government, it's about all of us.
With that positive note and the clear message that SDGs is for everybody and is everybody's business.
As we are entering the year 2020 now, which marks the beginning of the decade of action for the goals, and there's so much activities. People are saying it's lined up and it's expected also of nations. Are we really ready for the decade of action? Do you think we have actually peaked? Probably we are now going towards a winding down, or we're just about to take it to that very level.
Okay, so when Nigeria took stock of its implementation of the Millennium Development Goals, there was a crafting of
Transition
the country transition strategy
Yeah.
from the Millennium Development Goals to Sustainable Development Goals, and that strategic document faced if you like, the implementation of the SDGs into three phases. The first phase is actually the first 5 years, which is that of building on existing foundations, advocacy, sensitization, and partnership building.
Yeah.
The second phase is that of scaling up investments and implementation, which is leading us to the third phase, which is basically about tracking, monitoring, and reporting for the SDG, while simultaneously implementing those key initiatives. So I will say we have done extremely well, and it's a demonstration of the commitment of this administration to the 2030 agenda by establishing all these institutional frameworks that would enable us, achieve the SDGs, not only timely, but in a way and manner that is extraordinary. The realignment of the national statistical system will enable us in the next 10 years on annual basis to track our progress towards the SDGs. If we haven't done that, we wouldn't be able to track our progress towards the SDGs.
That was like laying good foundation.
It's solid foundation, if you like, for the SDGs. The ISDG domestication, it's now going to enable us, once we craft the successor development plan to the ERGP, it is to have a national plan that is SDG based with all the trade-offs and the financing mechanism that needs to support that. So that is key. Then now we've commenced even the process of evaluating priority SDGs and knowing what is learning from the process, and then using that learning to go into the decade of action. So broadly speaking, we have laid down the foundations that will enable us implement or scale up, if you like, the implementation during this decade of action for the SDGs. So now that gives us the advantage, because now we are not talking about laying the foundation anymore, but we're talking about scaling up and strengthening the implementation of the SDGs. And we have a lot of things at the moment that we are looking at. I've made mention of the fact that we need to scale up investment at the subnational level, and we need to work closely with the states and the local government to ensure that that mainstreaming of the SDGs do happen. We will support the states during this decade of action to, if you like, domesticate or customize the integrated sustainable development model, so that states, when they plan their annual budgets, they are speaking to a state plan that is now SDG based. Yes. When we achieve that, it's not only we're doing coordination and planning, but we're also doing resource mobilization, because we are asking the states to use their traditional budgetary sources to fund the SDGs, and that is the only way to go. Recent estimate have it that we need approximately $83 billion annually to sufficiently fund the implementation of the SDGs. But that is precisely. So, but that is not in isolation of the existing funding sources. And now we're in the process of this year, we are in the process with our development partners of crafting the integrated national financing framework for the SDGs. And that will bring together both the public and the private financing that will support the implementation of the SDGs in Nigeria. So broadly, if you like, these are the key initiatives that we are looking at into the new decade of action. A lot of activities will be scaled up. Investments are needed. Funding gap is a major challenge, but with the support of our development partners, we think these are surmountable. So Nigeria is one of the few countries that will pilot the design of the integrated national financing framework, like I've mentioned, in our relationship with the United Nations Development Program. We are also about to do an SDG impact mapping across the country to find out what sort of investment opportunities are available for the SDGs at the subnational level. So the whole idea of or concept of the decade of action is to
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you because for laymen out there who probably do not even know what we are talking about when we talk about decade of action. Does it mean that we have not been taking action all along, or is it from this decade we want to start taking action? Is it because it's 2020 or what? What does it really mean?
Okay, in a development parlance, it is to say that we have a plan of 15 years, which is the Sustainable Development Goals has a 15-year time frame, that we have spent 5 years, and that we have 10 more years to go. And that this 10 years is, like I've highlighted earlier, the first 5 years was meant to be basically that of putting institutional frameworks, operational mechanisms in place. But now the world leaders, community leaders, all concerned citizens are talking to themselves, saying that we have only 10 years to go to this commitment that we have made to not only the planet, to not only ourselves, but to the planet as well. So we need to tighten our belts, strengthen all our efforts, mobilize all that needs to be mobilized for the attainment of the SDGs. So it is about massive advocacy and sensitization, awareness creation, so that everyone will be on the same page, if you like, on the task that lies ahead of all of us that are involved in this in the overall implementation of the 2030 agenda. So it is reminding ourselves that we have only
Just
10 years left to achieve this broad, bold, and ambitious goals that the world set for itself and the planet. And so that is just it. Nothing is really about the decade of action, but just like 10 years of action.
Continue what you are doing, possibly scale it
and
up.
scale it up in the next 10 years. And obviously, that is what we are all
talking
really
about scaling up now and taking actions for the goals in the remaining decade of for the goals now. Somebody wants to know, government is doing so much, like you've rightly put out there. What should other people be doing? There are other stakeholders, because the SDGs recognize that government alone cannot attain or deliver the SDGs for the people. So what should other stakeholders be doing? What kind of action should they be taking at a time like this?
So we late last year, knowing that we're crossing to the decade of action, you remember we did an SDG activation with one of our partners, the world largest lesson.
Yeah.
So the family SDG activation week was to get commitment of not all those that are only involved in the implementation of the SDG, but even down to the community and the family level, so that we take a promise that as we move into the year 2020, which is rightly captured as the decade of action, is what can we do as individuals, as members of the household, as members of the community, what can we do to help achieve the Sustainable Development Goals? So our volunteers visited families in their houses and communities, religious leaders in their worshiping centers to commit 5 actions that will be taken in terms of their own individual contribution. So this whole of society approach is what we advocate and what we promote, that the SDGs cannot be achieved alone, because they are also interrelated, interconnected, and that no one person or no one institution has the overall monopoly of the implementation or the contribution toward the attainment of the SDGs. So we are all in this together, and the transformative promise of the 2030 agenda is to leave no one behind. And within that in that spirit, we will want to continue to catalyze this productive partnership among all stakeholders, so that together we achieve the sustainable development goals and leave no one behind. So part of the strategy of the office of the senior special assistant is to the president is to ensure that we mobilize this support from the all critical stakeholders through the strategic platforms we've established. With the state actors, we have the interministerial committee where we work with the ministries, department, and agencies to ensure that we mainstream the SDGs into our sectoral policies and plans. So going forward is to see how we strengthen that relationship and how all the ministries, department, and agencies integrate the SDGs into their sectoral policies and plans, so that all the annual budgets of the Federation, it's invested or channeled towards supporting the attainment of the SDGs. And obviously, the role of the non-state actors broadly, the private sector, the civil society, the scientific community, it's all embedded into the work of the office, and it is to take that partnership to the next level.
Yeah, thank God you mentioned partnership. And I'm talking about partnership. To what extent do you actually carry other people along in doing this now? Taking also into consideration the decade of action that we are entering. How do you intend to carry all the partners along, all the stakeholders? I know you've been doing so much of it. You've listed some of them already. So, what are your strategies to ensure that even the civil society, they become a core part of the implementation of the SDGs?
Okay, so basically is to ensure that we strengthen, first of all, the partnership. We will be having soon a retreat for the civil society organizations operating within the SDG space, and even within the voluntary national review process for the 2020. We are employing this whole of society approach, where all stakeholders will be involved in the processes that will lead us to the production of the voluntary national report to be presented to the high-level political forum. Our relationship with the organized private sector is going to be strengthened. The Honorable Minister of Finance has agreed to meet with the organized private sector at the instance of Her Excellency, the Senior Special Assistant to the President, to map out strategies and the role of the organized private sector in the implementation of the SDGs. And that will also happen through the, if you like, the overall framing of the integrated national financing framework. The private sector will be crucial and central to the design and implementation of that, because we are talking about innovative financing mechanisms that will support the attainment of the SDGs. And you cannot ignore the role of the organized private sector. We talk about financing mechanisms that are innovative. You have the green bond, the sukuk bond, the diaspora bond, the impact investment. All this will be embedded into our integrated national financing framework, which funding is a major challenge for the attainment of the SDGs. And the Addis Ababa Action Agenda for Financing Development and the United Nations Secretary General Financing Framework has already identified the key strategies that will help countries achieve the SDGs. And once we pilot that, it will be clear to us where these fundings will come from. Some of them will even be through strengthening domestic tax system and enhancing our capacity to generate, our fiscal capacity to generate more revenue that can help us finance the SDGs. So broadly, these are the key things. Like you've rightly mentioned, the partnership is there. It's just to strengthen that and take it to the next level. The Lagos 2020 Festival of Action will happen, and that will bring all the critical stakeholders in support of the implementation of the SDGs in Nigeria.
Yeah, talking about the implementation of the SDG and even the attainment is not going to be done by the national government alone. You rightly mentioned that the subnational government is very, very crucial. And data has always been a major issue in getting all of these things done. I understand the office did something that has to do with data bond recently. Maybe you want to expatiate on it. What this mean and to what extent you are getting the subnational government involved in data.
So we part of the national realignment, the statistician general of the federation has just signed a data bond with all the heads of ministries, departments, and agencies to ensure that they bring in periodic data through their administrative data sources into NBS and NBS into the National Statistical System as it relates to the 230 SDG indicators. That will also be taken to the subnational level where the statisticians general of the state will sign data bond with the ministry, department, and agencies, and therefore the entire National Statistical System is now realigned to the indicators and requirements of the SDGs.
And the subnational government is being carried along properly.
Yeah, they are part of the National Statistical System.
Yeah, so some of the state governments have also decided to launch their development plans and all of those things. And the office has been doing so much in terms of trying to mainstream the SDGs. And how well would you say this has been done?
So this is partly what I've mentioned, the work that we are doing in partnership with the United Nations Development Program to mainstream the SDG at the subnational level. Yeah, we have quite a number of states that have taken initiatives to craft their medium and long-term development plan that is SDG based. So the overall objective is to see more states do their SDG based development plans, and this office is supporting the subnational government, obviously. Through now the instrument of the conditional grant scheme to support the states for development planning and SDG based planning.
Is Nigeria on track with the implementation of the SDGs?
Obviously, we are on track in the overall implementation of the SDGs as the coordinating office of the SDG in the country. All the institutional mechanisms are in place, and as managers, we are to be held accountable for the output and the deliverables set out for ourselves. As for impact, it is too early to get to major impact. Just 4 years into it, the implementation, probably at the mid of this year and into next year, we can then begin to track impact and see where are we in terms of all these SDGs. But in terms of establishing institutional framework and the targets we have set for ourselves in the transition strategy, in the transition strategy document, the first 5 years is basically on building on existing foundation, advocacy and partnership building, and that we have done exceptionally well.
I hope that by the time we wind down in this decade of action, Nigeria will have a good story to tell.
Obviously, that is our prayer.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bala.
Thank you very much. This morning.
Remember, you can always watch this program and other episodes by subscribing to our YouTube channels on youtube.com/Fresh News TV and youtube.com/Agenda 2030 TV. You can also watch the program live on Facebook. Just log on to www.facebook.com/Fresh News NG and www.facebook.com/Agenda 2030 TV. Follow us on all our social media platforms at Agenda 2030 TV on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Remember to drop your comments and share with your contacts. Do use the hashtag Agenda 2030 and hashtag Agenda 2030 TV. And that has been the size of our program this week. Do keep a date with us next week as we bring you another refreshing episode. I am Tony Nkamiang.